Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special episode. My name is Felix Sartre. This is the Dynamics podcast. I'm thinking that we'll run through just a high kind of installation of VS Code. We're going to do this because VS Code is a bit of a, maybe for some of you, a bit scary. For me, it was, at least in the beginning. It took me a while to kind of understand what it is. It's an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. And, you know, these DevOps things, I think the developers are very comfortable. We consultants are a bit less comfortable in those areas. It took me a while to get there, but I'm really comfortable now and I really like it. So let's simply jump in and get going. Why don't we? So let's start off with the base install, right? This is a new VM that I've deployed. It's running in the cloud. So let me just open up my browser here and we'll go to install VS Code. I think that is all we need to search for, and you'll see you can download VS Code right here. Now, I'm using Windows, so we'll go through and we'll get the direct download button here. Let's do it. Like what you do is just next. You should be able to just install this. So we talk a lot about the MCP and the MCP capability to publish and use the systems. But I think the primary thing is the way that we work with the config files and the way that we work with the agents. And working with Visual Studio is a bit of a different ballgame. So let's have a look at how this works now. In this case, we can sign in and sign in with GitHub. Let's do, Jesus, is this what we're going to do all night? The point is that we need some type of account to get into Visual Studio. Oh, do I have to do a visual puzzle? Let's see if this works, because it didn't do it last time. Hopefully it will just get done. My God. All right. Seems like it's launching now. There you go. Now, I'm logged in, and we got all of these goodies going, right? So I got a couple of chat messages. I got a couple of inline suggestions. These are kind of your credits. So when you've signed in with your studio right here, you do get a couple of credits, and you can use those to do whatever. If you sign up for a Copilot or a GitHub Copilot license, you get a lot more. We're just going to open up a folder. This is kind of the key part of when you want to set this up. So first thing you need to do, because it's creating a lot of files, and so we need to build like a folder where we set this up. And so we'll just create a new folder called vibe config here. And underneath that, I'll put all my files, right? So I'll select this folder. And now I have like a root folder where I can work. Yes, trust the authors. So the next thing we need to do is connect to MCP servers. How you do that is by going to this top menu here and then creating this larger than sign, writing MCP add server, this one right here. Now, you can pick the HTTP, and then it asks for a URL. We're going to add two different URLs in here. We're first going to add, let's do search for the Microsoft Learn MCP. So this is the Learn MCP, and here's the API or the MCP URL. We'll copy that, and then we'll just put that in to my URL right here. It gives me a name, so I'll call it Microsoft Learn. And then you can say, is it global, meaning that it will work across all of these workspaces? Now, we don't want to go into the workspaces. I normally put it in the context of a workspace because then I can control which servers I'm going to connect to. So I'll do workspace now. And then you'll see it'll add this in on top of the server, right? So you see on top of this one, it says now it's running. And you can stop it, or you can restart it, and it has access to 3 tools. This is the first MCP, and we're using the Microsoft Learn to do that. Now I'm going to just, based off of this, create my first document, which is an implementation guide. So you see, it's using the mcp.json, which is now stored in the VS Code folder. What we're going to do now is use the Oh, and then we also have to pick kind of what model we're going to use. I'm going to use Claude because that's what I can use right now. And I'm going to say, use the Learn MCP to create a comprehensive implementation guide for creating organization, a new legal entity, and GL setup of a company for Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. Build a GL README file with instructions. And we're using that to, so it's just going to go in and it's going to learn from the MCP server here, and it's going to build out a documentation folder. Maybe it's going to do a folder, maybe it's just going to do a file, but it's going to give me a setup capability of what is important when I need to kind of configure a GL setup for Dynamics. And let's just see what it does when we when we get this going. Using superlatives is great when we're talking to these models, because using words like comprehensive or beautiful, or it makes it actually go in and do more work. That's why you say comprehensive. Then it's building something that is larger. Okay, so now I got the GL setup README file, which is planning, legal entity setup, general ledger configuration, chart of accounts, financial dimensions, number sequences, and that's it. So how much did we use? 2% of our allowance for this month to build a complete reference guide. And you probably have something like this, right? You see there's a lot of information in there and on how to set it up. It might not be the optimal one to use, but it's an example of how you can do that. So now I have setup README, I have an implementation checklist, what needs to be done, and I have a reference. Now, question is, should we do it for accounts payable as well? Let's have a look. No, I won't. I will actually not be doing that. Let's just do it for the GL, because the next thing we do, okay, so now it has a bit of a reference, right? That's the first part that you need to do. The second thing we want to do is we're going to connect to an F&O environment, which I provisioned as well. Yeah. So here is a fully fresh, complete just DAT environment. And I did provision, if you look in my About folder here, we did provision the 47 environment. So this is the latest and greatest, which has a couple of more capabilities that really makes this more efficient. So yeah, you definitely have to be on 47 if you want to try this out and work with it, because the data input, if you want to make a simple agent, fine, you can use 46. If you want to make like a configuration agent, which we're doing now, you definitely need 47 if you don't want your credits to run out really, really quickly. So if we go into feature management, of course, I haven't activated anything yet. Let's just do this. Let's do enable all. And it will run for a little while. In the meantime, you can tell it, so if you want the agent to kind of read through some of these, I have the chat window open here, but I can go in and I can see, you can see if you select a document in or a file in this kind of center piece, you can click a plus sign here and you can add that context when you're working with it. Oh, we have to set this thing up now. Let's do that. If in doubt, just put standard, save. So, okay, so we got a couple of kind of reference setup, deployment runbooks. What's that? Not sure if we need all of this. Anywho, let's just use this one as a reference for now. Next thing up with our plan is, of course, then to actually create a configuration. So let's check if the MCP server is up and running. So how do you do this? We go in here, you see on top, we'll copy this URL, not the question mark, but at least the slash. And then we'll go in and we'll add a new MCP server. So going in here, / and then add MCP server, boom, and HTTP, paste in this. Then after your environment URL, you do just MCP, enter that, and then we'll call this Dynamics 365. We'll create it as a workspace only scope. And now you see I have my running environment up here, and then I have another one down here. I'll click start, and then it wants me to authenticate. So I'll do allow. And now we'll be a bit careful because now it should open up my login, and I'll just authenticate with this one. Should go in. Now, the question is, what's happening now? We don't know. So click more and then show the output. This pops up here. What's happening in the backend? It's just fetching error. It obviously didn't start up. Sometimes it takes a while for the MCP server to start up. So we'll create some configs in the meanwhile. Fetch authorization metadata. Failed fetch authorization from metadata. And there's a couple of things we have to just make sure when we're doing this setup. Just going into my MCP, there's a configuration list or kind of accepted external allowed clients. So in my allowed clients, it always turns Copilot Studio on. That's always true. But the VSCode one, now there are two scenarios. One is that you're in a domain or place where this is actually the client ID it's using. So it's ending with FAA 56. Of course, you have to enable this to be able to connect to it. Sometimes VSCode is not actually using this app. In those cases, you will be able to just add the client ID, but I'll show you when you log in how that works. So this one gets an error. It's not logging in. And here you see the application, and it's using the right application ID, right? It might have failed, and it will actually put the app ID in here. What you do then is just copy this GUID that comes up here, which is trying to kind of pull it, and then you go in and you add that as a new entity in here, call it something else, paste in the GUID here, and then of course set it to authenticate. Well, it should be working now. Why on earth? And now it works. I don't know why. But yeah, so go in and create a new one and then see if it kind of jiggles it into form. So what happened now is I got the 21 tools. This means that it's finally running. Okay, so we're at a point where we at least have the MCP server up and running. We've created some README files. Let's do a creation of a couple of files. So the thing is now, let's just do GL setup. This, to be honest, I mean, I don't know any GL setup. I don't know how to do this, which is a good example of actually running this now. We use this GL setup right here. So the question is, do you want the context of everything that has happened, or do you just want to have a new one? So again, this is normal kind of LLM. Do you want the context window from the previous discussions to be in there, or do you want to start fresh with the new setup? Which is, I think, one of the best things about this process, because you have all of this output that's generated. So when you run the LLMs, it doesn't just, everything is not in the context windows. You don't have to go back because you can just use the output as the baseline for the next setup. And now I'm going to say, build me a configuration for a US company called, let's call it Zava, need US GAAP accounts and general financial dimensions. Create a new legal entity and build all necessary, something like this, files for deployment into a new FNO environment. Now, before I start this, there's a couple of agents. So we have different modes. We have the agent mode, which also will interact with the MCP servers. And then we have the plan mode, which will not kind of deploy or create anything. Create CSV files in Java configuration folder. All right, so now it's using the GL setup README. So it's using this as the baseline for it, reasoning over that. So now it's going into plan mode, and then kind of it also looks into all of those other files. That might mess it up, to be honest, but we'll see. But it's diligent enough to go through all of those other documents as well and actually read those. Let me clarify the question scope. And now it's giving me some basic questions here as well. So do you want it's the gap accounts. How well do you want it? Do you want it comprehensive, or do you want it simple? Let's go comprehensive. I don't know. Financial dimensions, department, the cost center. That's fine. Which modules? Let's do GL only. You could have selected some other ones. Single company for now, and let's do submit. New question, Java tax ID. Yeah, let's just submit one. Naming of the document number sequences. Let's do just Java dash. Let's have a look. It's building a plan of what it needs to be building as a part of a quite extensive set of documents, how they're related, of course, what the sequence of these imports should be done. And then you click Start Implementation, and it actually starts this process of building all of these files. So let's do that. So no worries. Yeah, look at this, right? You want to install the recommended Rainbow CSV because, yes, Rainbow, like CSV files and having syntax highlighting for the CSV files is good. So this one uses some type of different like colors for the different fields. So it's really much more easy to have a look at what the different fields are. So just suggesting this, if you want to open up the CSV files after it's installed, you see now it looks a lot better than just having a flat file. So, but yeah, that's the experience for installing these extensions. The agents will actually tell you that even though it doesn't probably need it because it can read all of these files no matter what, it does it as a convenience for you, which is awesome. Now let's create the final validation files. Should probably have built more files. And another thing that I really, really like as well is that if you ask it to, did we remember to set up everything we need? Do we have the journals? Do we have, etc.? And then it will go through and say, oh no, well, let's create that as well. And I really love it. Obviously, it's very diligent on documentation, which is good. And it's quite extensive. And then it summarizes everything. If I go to this other place now, it should, when it's done, just say bloom, and then it comes like this. So then you go do whatever you want, and then it feeds back to you, says, hey, I'm done doing the config. And then we can do a start deployment. Start here for deployment. Import files. Import sequence. Okay, so it gives me an idea that I should use this as the process right here. So what I've experienced is that you can probably go back now and tell it to, hey, so go through all of my setup, validate that it's justified, that I'm not missing anything. Are there things that we should think about? Are there other master data tables that we should have put in? I'm just going to have it create those while it's going along, but you should probably do it before you start deployment. But for the sake of just showing you the value of our amazing MCP server, we'll just do, let's start the deployment. It looks like IQ is doing a good job though. I normally use Opus 4.6 and it's about 3x the cost. Yeah, and now, so what it does now is connecting to the MCP server, and it's doing this kind of find data tool. So it's trying to find a table search for the legal entity. Look at this ability here. So it will stop and ask you for the approval rights to do that. You can click allow once, and then it will ask you the next time. you can click allow in this session for this one, this specific action not to pop up again, or you can just say allow tools from Dynamics 365 ERP MCP server in this workspace or in this session, which is this chat that I'm doing right now. I'll just say for this workspace, I'll just approve all of these. So when all of the other menu functions or action calls comes in, it doesn't need to ask me again for permission. Yeah, and the first time it runs does take a little while, because the reason for that is actually spinning up a session for this unique process. So once it's spun up the session, it should go ahead and respond with the data that it's doing now. So it went from running to ran, and now it's saying good, it found what it needed, identified legal entities, good. I now have the setup. Now let me create Java legal entity. Let's start with phase 1, and now it's doing the data create entities, and you can see here that it's doing the legal entities, inserting the Java company information based on the legal entity file that it's doing right here. So it's kind of pulling this in and creating the company right now. Consider state codes requirement for validation methods. Let me use the form tool instead. So see, now it's kind of contextually switching to the actual menu interaction. So it went out and it actually found the legal entity, found the setup that it has now with Java, and went in, and now it's using the forms to do the final setup, which is so cool to see, because it's doing the bulk import using the data entities, and then it's going in, oh, I have to do these things. Like for instance, when it does the upsert of bill of materials, it posts everything through these data codes, and then it goes in, opens up each of the individual bill of materials, and then clicks activate and approve. And that has to be done inside of the forms and the context of the data imported, which is kind of cool. And now it's just moving forward with some of the setup. So just to validate that it's working now, we can actually go in here, and if let me just refresh that. Maybe I should just set Java as my standard legal entity. Let me do that. Well, we'll wait with that until we configured it. So I'll go in and I'll personalize. Nope, I'll go in and do my user options. And I'm going to set my standard company as Java. Look at that, already working. Cool beans. Given the complexity of importing 243 accounts via the API, which is many enum fields, let me take a more efficient approach. Let me close the form. So instead of going through the forms, it's actually, oh, it's using the data. Yeah, no, now it's messing about. See, it's trying to use the data management. Oh, let's see this. I want to see what it does. Normally, I would probably tell it to say that this won't work, and now it will give me like a task. You should do this instead. Or you can automate something. Which do you prefer? I'll tell it to please continue with the deployment using the data entities as the primary. Method of import. Because it should find the data entities for this. It should be somewhere in here that it should find. So now it's doing phase 2, import main accounts, still on the forms. All right. Let me set the source data format. Is it still on the data structure? It seems like it's in, yeah, it's data migration framework. Using the OData. Now it's reasoning. Yeah. This is what I wanted. See, now it's creating the main accounts. We need to find the existing main accounts. I think it's also, sometimes it's kind of pushing in a tiny little data packets to just see if it's actually doing what it expected. Yeah, excellent. Now I can see the main accounts categories in the system. And then it would run, because it's the OData has a upper limit of, depending on how large the package is, it will go in and try and run like multiple imports to get everything in. So it kind of sequences through it. I have imported thousands of lines, and it batches them in about like a couple of hundred in one. Sometimes it goes in as 20 in one, depending on how it's set it up. But it's significantly more efficient than just running through and clicking the menu items to build it, which you have to do in 10.046. So that's why we do 20.47. See, it's already put in. Excellent. Phase 2. Did it put in all the chart of accounts though? It seems like it's only put in a couple of them. Yeah, phase 2 partially complete. Successfully imported 10 GL accounts in the OData. Now it wants me to use PowerShell. And I will install PowerShell. We'll just let it do its thing. We should probably stop it. If I used a different model, it would probably have worked, to be honest. See what it does. Which would you want to prefer? Continue automatically. The batch create the 233 GL accounts proceed. Phase 3, phase 4. No, we should definitely try and build. Use the data entities for GL account, or the main account creation. Go through each of the files, or batch it. We use batch it if needed. See, this one is now almost out of context and is starting to kind of degrade. And you will see it now very quickly go into the summarize action, probably, which goes back into everything that is pulled in, and then it aggregates everything. Haiku is a fairly small context window. Oh, what did it do now? Is it making the categories? Now I'll batch create OData for 50. It has a groups of 50. Okay, so if it's 50, it's kind of just 4 imports. There's the summary action. So now it's freeing up some of the context that it needed to do. And it will go through that. While it's doing this, let's go into the main accounts, right? Chart of accounts for Zala. And it is more than 10. So it's already done a couple of them. Even main account categories are entered as they should be. I don't know anything about this stuff, guys, but it seems correct. You probably want to validate it if you're an accountant, but it seems fairly correct to me. Now, it doesn't have any bank accounts yet, and you would probably want to, well, it does have an operating bank account primary. We can probably connect that to a bank account later on, and that is one of the things that I saw it miss in my first implementation, because I don't know that bank accounts are obviously a very important thing if you want to do payments. So when it ran through this previously, like an end-to-end AR AP process, it actually started building out the bank accounts and then also retroactively adding those main accounts to the different chart of accounts, depending on the company that they were assigned to, which is pretty awesome. Like those are things that you would have to have a very good consultant, or at least a fairly knowledgeable consultant to do. I have no idea how that works, but it actually did it for me. Was it correct? I can't tell you, because I probably need someone else who knows this to validate it. Okay, so batch 3 complete. All right, we should already have more accounts. Let's refresh and see. Now we're getting somewhere. So now it's just running through the rest of it. I mean, you could probably use data migration framework to do this. And you might want to do that just to get the accounts in. If you have templated companies, why don't spend time on this? Just use the DMF to get through. But then you can use this to do other things. So you kind of waste your chat messages on this. So we're at 14%. We should be able to build something cool here. So we're at, let me just run this while it's doing this. And it's just running in the background. You can actually start a new session right here. And then set up, let's do, what it called? Like this. Configuration for accounts payable. Using the learn MCP. And then it will do that in the background as well. So you can run multiple things. What you shouldn't do from experience is run multiple processes into F&O. At least not in a single environment like this. Then you would probably want to open up a duplicate workspace and then work in that. Reason for that is, hey, where did my chat sessions go? Did it close it when I exited it? Oops. Or are they running in the background? I don't know. And there are local agents in process. So we'll let them run. Maybe they'll ping back when they're done. Let's see. Yeah. A couple of other things. If it runs too long, so there's in chat, if you go into settings and you go to chat settings, there's like a maximum request per turn per agent. This one, set it to, depending on how you want it to run, send it to something that is significantly higher than 25. I set it to 500 or 1,000 in my other environment, but then I do have kind of premium, so if it runs into, let's say, a loop or does something else, it's maybe safe to have a lower setting on this, depending on how you're setting it up. Oh. So let's do 100. Other things that might be important that you want to do is understand the domain of skills and instruction rule sets. There are other things you might want to set up here as well. See, now it's ticking in here with information, but I'm not able to go into that chat. Why not? Well, another thing you might want to check is the custom agents that you can build. So if you create new custom agents, like they have underneath here, they have the plan agent, the ask agent, you can make a configuration agent that will live in your workspace. And again, another kind of detail that you might want to get into if you want to build like a really, really good agent to be able to do these configurations. Again, it's up to you. I'm just showing you the concepts right here, and I think the community will probably come up with some really, really great standard, both even plugins. I guess there will be some extensions that will be coded out there, but then also some really, really nice plugins that we can do. Other thing that you can do, right? You have the model choice here, and then you have the agent type that you want to do. You can configure your own one. Then we also have a couple of where does it execute? So you can put it in the background, which means that you won't see it kind of, obviously, it seems like it's running in the background right now, because you can put it into local, which means that you see it right here, or you can go in the background and it works in the background as it continues, and you can have one agent fire off a couple of background agents and then come back with the results. Then you have the cloud one, which runs in the cloud, but I'm not sure. I haven't tried it because I don't know if it kind of pulls in the context of everything that's happening here. And you can also call it out to Claude. So you can use, if you have Claude and you're running that, you can actually connect to Claude here as well and run it as a part of that agentic framework. If you have paid credits there and you have ability to consume those, you can use Claude as an extension here as well. And there are other agent types that you can see. They will probably add more as they go along, but you can also go here and learn about these types. If it's using, yeah, this is the AP setup. Remember we told the other agent that we wanted an AP setup bot? Yeah.
it's done that for the AP stuff as well. Let me just pull that up. So now you see the planning, accounts payable parameters, the vendor configuration, the payment setup, advanced features as well. It goes in and has a fairly extensive documentation of this already. And I just asked it to go learn and crawl that to get this information. Could probably do that in flight, but I really like the concept of having these locally, because then I can tell it to improve on itself and then maybe also rationalize or consume it and scale it down if it needs to be more efficient and free up some space in the context window. There's a lot of these things that you might want to think about. While we do have some setup now, of course, there is a lot of information here. And the README files, to be honest, I mean, the format that it does in the Markdown file is very, very good for us to read. So you can kind of browse through it. But there's a lot of information. And even like some of the diagrams that it might have been working on, I think I did it. Did it do it here? This is just a reference document. Sometimes it does like interconnected charts and something like that. But what we can do is that we can tell it to read through the configuration files and build me again comprehensive and visually pleasing overview in an HTML file using linked references to show dependencies and use dark muted colors, add the context of the Java configuration to show some examples of what is deployed and opportunities to add capabilities in Dynamics 365 Finance. Oh, just finance this time. Let's see. So the point is that when we're reading this, of course, the documentation is fine. But let me show you just an example of how it could look, right? Now it's just overlaid, but that's fine. And I did kind of the same process as you're seeing here in the background for deploying the Java company. And it was 6 legal entities, 25 different products, 15 bill of materials, 8 routes, only 165 files in 5 countries. Now let's browse down and see what it actually did. So this was a US company, Canadian, UK, Swedish, Italian, and then a consolidation company on top of that as well. I asked it to build a supply chain network in a separate file, and then I told it to kind of tie it into this file afterwards. So you see, it actually built like an overview of the individual locations that it's built. And you see this is from Vancouver and then to Mississippi. There's North Carolina. All of these are then also using the interlinked and how the supply chain is going to work. You can also, it's really, really nice. I mean, if I wanted to view Europe, I just click this one and I'll see kind of the setup here goes to Bergamo and then to this other place. And then we have the end-to-end supply chain that it did, from the raw materials to the production sites to the intercompany transfer. There's assembly plants and distribution center that goes out to the finished goods that they then sell to retail and the B2B teams. It had 25 products across different types of products. This is the raw materials. These are the semi-finished goods, the finished goods. And it's really easy to have an overview. I just asked it to kind of document everything that it did when it was done. You can imagine this went on for a couple of days though. But the scope of this is quite extensive, and the output is just marvelous. So there's a production line, very, very simple routes, but this is how it goes, and you can see kind of the additive time that it needs to get through all of these routes. There's a bill of material overview. There's also kind of how does the intercompany do all of the transactions between the different legal entities. There's dependencies that I wanted to, and hopefully we'll see something that's also built in the other file. It's done now, but I'll just run through this file. So there's a ledger module with kind of how all of these are then dependent on each other and how they set up. And you can see that I've set up the consolidation, the intercompany, the foundation layer with the companies and currencies and so on, the GL stuff, tax accounts, and then all of the business modules for the AP and AR, and that's kind of set up here as well. And what else does it do? Tax, of course. What's the different legal entities are in different countries, so it pulled in the different VAT amounts. Of course, everything is set up in the back end. Also with independent chart of accounts for individual countries. There's again a dependency map on the phases of the deployment and how we've kind of done these, because we needed to do the foundation before we did the core master data for products and bill of materials, and then all of the different phases. So this is kind of set up in this deployment document that we have before we do the end-to-end testing. So all of the phases are done mostly in the sequence, but some of them are being able to be parallelized. And then a module configuration map. Where are the connections between the different modules that we prepared? So how does tax kind of feed into the accounts payable, which then feeds into production control? All of this is set up. End-to-end testing flow, and it ran through all of these things and I've tested them. There's also then a volume. What is the output of all of this, and what have we built? So that is a single document built off of all of the things that we've learned from this deployment, right? Really, really nice. So it's now done. And so it's done the setup. You see here that it's written 1,761 lines. We can browse up to see the configuration overview. So let's see what this did. You saw the Zava one, and now you've seen it do a lot of things. Let's reveal it in Explorer and just open it as a HTML file. Double click it in Edge always. So here's the setup that it did for us now. It has a GL overview, a couple of docs. So here's it very neatly describes it. But again, these charts when you tell it to kind of show into dependencies and all of these things, it's really, really good at showing all of this setup. So maybe we can zoom out a bit to just show all of the setup here. So this is the diagram, organization, currency accounts, then go to dimensions, validate rules, and GL vouchers together, then the posting validation. Yeah, this is right. It's done all of these things, so it's ready to be used. And then it has an expansion opportunity for the AP setup that we've documented, but we haven't run yet. Then we have the GL stuff, all of the setting, the accounts, the different setup on how it's done that. Set up the vendor master. This is the setup framework. It hasn't done it yet. Matching two-way or three-way tolerances, and it knows all of this because the configuration files is quite extensive. What else? Production configuration, yeah, because it said something about the accounts and setup of that. Well, this is the company, Sava Austin, US GAAP, and the dimensions and value. And so on and so forth. I mean, it's quite extensive. Quite, again, using the word comprehensive is like a no-brainer in this topic, right? If you want to build a short but efficient, you can probably do that. But you can always go back and tell it to remove or add sections if you need to. Really, really nice. And again, just a single prompt, right? We just did a single prompt to. This is the prompt that we did to get all of these insights out of the system. Now we've been rate limited, and this is where we'll stop. So one of the things, if even if you haven't run out of credits, you might get rate limited as you are consuming quite a lot of these credits as we go along. You wait just a couple of minutes, and then you can click try again. If you want to do that, it should work. But we've seen it trying to kind of figure out its way. We see it getting more details as it goes along. Hopefully, at least this gets you started on your journey. I think for me, it's a bit exciting to see these models running back and forth and doing all of these things. If you have the credits and if you have the ability to go and time to play with this, I definitely think you should go do that. If you have an implementation project, please tell me how it's going, and if you're using Vibe Config to help you get along, because I think it can do a lot of the heavy lifting of data transformation, especially in new companies that you're setting up. If you're doing pre-sales demos and doing those things, it is an excellent tool to just create those companies, get those things started. And one of the things I've really had a good experience is, of course, using the broader and larger models. They are extremely good at carrying the context and doing those, figuring out how to, if you're just one value, then you have to adjust some other values in other CSVs and working across those files before you do that import, which I know is a lot of effort for implementation teams to be doing. This is what I think is the benefit of this vibe coding stuff, right? It is us working together with all of those files that we normally put in Excel spreadsheets or something like that, but doing it with an agent. And the benefit also is that you don't have to 100% match the data entity inside of the system, as long as you get the data in there and some type of naming convention that is practically transferable to the system. You can just tell the agent to translate that in real time while it's actually punching the data in for you. You don't have to do all these things yourself. So just make sure that you try this out. I think it's going to be a very exciting space moving forward. Hopefully more people will go out and do this. I saw Sherry Shang was in the space as well for configuring new modules. So if you look at Sherry Shang, she's the PM for the pricing engine that we have, which has a lot of interdependencies. There's a complex configuration setup that you need to do to get everything flowing as you want it. Now imagine just going into one of those experiences right here, pulling down the context of that model, which is now very well documented, of course, in docs. You use Learn as a template to create how you should configure it without even knowing how most of this work. You can have it run a setup for you. Then you can use a template to validate. So you can tell it, like, here are the expected outcomes of doing these types of sales orders, and just validate that these things match these other expected values that we have. So you can actually set it up easily that way. Even for complex scenarios, I think this is really exciting. You saw the consolidation company. I've seen, like, there are some modules that we do have that I think is underutilized because we sometimes don't spend time enough to set those up, or they are, maybe you haven't seen them in a while and they might be good enough for some of those scenarios. Let it map out that, and let it also kind of show the gaps that it can't do. I would imagine in the future, documenting those types of gaps would probably also be easy to make an ADO file, create that extension to finance and operations, and push it in to the environment once you want to get that in there. There are endless opportunities, and this is just to get you started. Hopefully you will now download Visual Studio, not be as afraid as I was in the beginning, but see that this is an extremely much more proficient way of working with the agents and the agentic workloads towards these configuration files than you might want to have experience with Copilot Studio and other agents before. Once you get this going, once you start this thing up, we will also have more content coming out. So Eugene and Sean and Christian Simonson and also Murray Fife. If you watch Murray Fife, he's doing a lot of this already. I think I saw a post from him yesterday that he's not going to touch any UX in the future. So he's just going to be there vibe configuring everything, setting it up from his agents. And I think also there's an opportunity for of course, sellers to do a lot more industry-specific, customer-specific demos on demand. Yes, I think I'll call it a day, and I have a lot of other things that I want to show you, and I'll get some of my colleagues and also people from the community to come on this podcast, and we'll have much more to share and show. I think it's a group effort to get this going. I don't know where it's going right now. I think there will be some out of the box config files. I've made some. Sean made some really good ones that are built based on the deployment framework and our data models and our what's it called, the business process archive that we have. So yeah, have fun. Go check out the Visual Studio and the plugins and the extensions that you can get. I think there will be some really, really nice future opportunities here. So have a great day, and see you later.